I play off a +2 handicap, even though I don't have a perfect golf swing. In this video, I'm going to be taking you out on the golf course with me and showing you all the little course management strategies and things I'm thinking about before I hit every shot, which allows me to play good golf without having a perfect golf swing. Your brain is the 15th club in your golf bag. Today, I'm going to be teaching you how to actually use it. Now, we often hear people talking about the phrase golf IQ, and I think this is just someone who thinks their way around the golf course better than someone else. This doesn't necessarily sound exciting or glamorous, but I actually think it's probably one of the biggest ways you can get better at golf. So today I'm going to give you a deep dive into course management by taking you around the golf course with me. I'm just going to dive into all the things I'm thinking about when I'm out on the golf course that helps me make the right decisions. Now, I think course management is talked about a lot, but people maybe don't understand exactly what it means. And for me, I think a really important thing to remember is if you're going out on the course and trying or attempting to hit shots that you can't hit or are not in your skill level, that is bad course management. So let's see how we can get away from that. So I'm on the 10th tee box at my home club at Woodley, and I think this is a great hole to start with because there's loads going on here. But first off, when we start on the tee box, I think there's so many different things to think about. The first one is what's the biggest danger and what do we want to avoid? What are the things that are going to really drive our score up? The second is where would we want to play our next shot from? So if you know the course and you know where the optimal place to be is, it's really good to be thinking about that and have in mind how you can get in that zone. We also need to think about what the trade-offs are of avoiding the danger and sometimes accept the reality that there actually isn't a perfect shot we can hit in every scenario. So this hole here is a massive right to left dogleg. It's all out of bounds left, which obviously isn't great. It's also really easy to run through the fairway because it's such a severe right to left shape hole, and there's also trees all down the right of this hole, so actually if you go too far past the out of bounds and too far through the fairway, you can end up with big overhanging branches in your way. So there's definitely a lot to think about here, and I think that comes into what I mentioned about trade-offs. For me here, I know on this hole the biggest hazard is that out of bounds. We're adding 2 shots onto our score straight away by going in there, so actually we just need to take that out of the options and make sure we're hitting a club and a shot that moves us well away from that. Now this place is a pretty long par 4, it's 363 yards from the red and 450 from the yellows. It also has quite a lot of elevation and it just plays longer because generally you can't hit a straight drive down because of the shape of the hole. So how would I go about picking what club I'm going to hit here? So first off, I'm going to look for my most simple option. And for me, that would be just going straight up the fairway here, staying well away from those hazards on the left and giving myself a really easy shot. And I think that should be the option for the majority of golfers, especially women if they were teeing off this tee box. The reality is on a lot of holes like this, which are very tricky and play longer and there's out of bounds hazards, we're actually just better playing this as a par 5, moving away from that out of bounds and not risking that extra penalty shot. But actually for me as a scratch golfer, I know if I play up there, play short into the middle of the fairway, I'm going to have over 200 yards into the green. And if I want to even attempt to give myself a par look, that's going to be really difficult. So is there a second option that's still safe, like 90% of the time, that I could look at? So the trees on the left here are 145 yards to safely carry them. And I think for me, when I can carry my 7-iron that distance, that's a fairly safe option. Now, the other things I've got to factor in here is what the run out is. So on that same line, it's 195 until I run out of fairway, and about 190 until I get to the point where there's going to be overhanging branches in the way. Now, none of those numbers include slope. We can see we're fairly uphill here. I think this is going to add 10 to 15 yards. So I'm going to move that 145 safety number to like 160. Now it's important to note here the 145 is not the distance just past the trees. I've added about 15 yards past the trees to make sure I'm definitely over any branches. I'm definitely safely over even if I don't quite strike it right. Now that back number is obviously then playing about 205 with the slope, but between 160 and 205 is not loads of room to land the ball and for it to run out, especially in summer when it's firm. So in this scenario in summer, if I decide I want to hit over the tree to give myself a chance of a shorter second shot, I have to accept that I've got to be over the out of bounds, I've got to be safe from that scenario and from wasting 2 shots, and my ball may run out and give me a shot that has an overhanging branch in the way. But from that position, I'll definitely be able to advance the golf ball, get somewhere near the green, and then be able to play a short pitch on, which is way better than taking the 2-shot penalty off the tee. Now, a perfect shot here really would be like a 175 shot over that tree. That's going to leave me 170 into the green. That's still like a 6 or a 7 iron, so it's still a lot of club, but it is giving me an opportunity to get there in 2. So we've got my ideal number. I want to hit it between 165 and 175 over that end right hand tree. So next I need to take into account the conditions for the day. So it's very windy today, but actually luckily it's off the left here, which is going to be pulling me away from the out of bounds if anything, so I'm not too worried about that. It is obviously winter and it's pretty freezing cold. I think I've got about 4 jumpers on, so one, I'm probably going to swing it a bit slower because of all those layers, and 2, it's cold so the ball's not going to go as far, so I'm going to add like 10-15 yards extra onto that. So from that initial like 145 safety number that I had at the start, I'm adding 15 yards for the slope, that's getting me to 160. I'm then going to add another 15 yards for the cold, so that's going to get me to 175. And that's like my minimum distance that I can hit this shot. Remember, I had another 40 yards after that were safe before I run through the fairway into the trees. So I need to hit this between 175 and 215 to be in that safe zone. Now, personally for me, I think the best option for this today is going to be my 5 iron, something that definitely gives me enough height to get over the tree and gives me enough distance. I would be a little bit concerned that my 4 iron would go too low, so it would give me a little extra safety in terms of distance, but I don't want to clip the tree. I could also go a hybrid, but I think that could go a little bit long and also sometimes comes out a little bit lower. So we're going to go with 5 iron. That's actually perfect. Hopefully you can see on the shot tracer how it just moved a little bit with the wind at the ends. It kind of hit the peak height, but because I'd taken into account all those factors, that has ended up in the perfect position. It wasn't necessarily my best strike, it was a tiny little bit low on the face, but because I've picked a club I know goes high enough, even if I don't strike it perfect, it's still got over that tree. Now, this is a great example of when I talk about picking clubs for your home course. If I purely played all my golf here and I didn't go away and play competition golf, I would definitely change the structure of my bag to take into account for this hole. So I'd probably carry like a 9 or a 7 wood, or maybe even both, like one for summer and one for winter, which would perfectly go the right distance and give me loads of extra height compared to a 5 iron to get over that tree. So I can imagine there's going to be holes on your golf course that are just like that, and dialing your bag to give you the shots you need to hit on those holes are super important. Okay, we've got 205 yards left to the pin. It is literally right at the back of the green, so probably adding like an extra 10 yards from that middle number. So it's actually 194 to the middle, 178 to the front. I think the wind probably had a tad more of an impact than I thought it would. But because I added those extra numbers in and given myself a little bit of room, you can see we're easily away from that left side. Now, it's cold and windy, so that 205 number is probably playing like 220. It is a little bit downhill to the green. I'm using my ShotScope Pro LX laser, and because I'm not playing a tournament, I can put the slope function on, and that's telling me it's playing about 8 downhill. So I can go like factor that back off again. So I'm around the 215 number, which for me means I'm going to need to hit a 3 wood. Now, I know in these conditions that's just not going to go long, but if it was summer, I might bring that back a little bit just because it's a back pin and I really don't want to go past that because I know the green slopes massively from back to front, and if I go past the pin, I'm going to have a really fast putt. So there's always those things to factor in. Now, if I was thinking that I couldn't reach there and I wanted to lay up, I do need to factor in the fact that there is a bunker down there. So as well as 2 greenside bunkers, there's a bunker short of the green, and that's 168 to carry, 153 to the front. So if I was wanting to lay up, I'd be looking at something that's like a 140 number to leave me 60 in to make sure I'm not going anywhere near that bunker. So now I've got my club, there's a few things to factor in. Obviously I'm on a mat, so I've got a pretty perfect lie, but the ball is above my feet. Now, there's a few things that can happen with this. A lot of times people hit the ball right to left. Sometimes people block it out to the right. You kind of need to experiment and find out which one you are. And you also need to kind of look at the danger and figure out where you wouldn't want to miss. This is actually a pretty wide green and the pin's in the middle, so with either bunker, it's not really much of a difference. Now, I do know for me personally with a 3 wood, I'm more to move it right to left, so I'm going to just aim a little right of the flag, give myself some room, and know if I do end up with that block, it still should be all right. That was actually drawing in so perfectly, then the crosswind hit it. The wind actually hit that way harder than I thought it would, because given it's so sheltered down there, I thought it'd be alright. But we're on the right edge of the green, so perfectly managed down this hole so far. Okay, we're on the fringe, but we can putt, which is definitely good. It's also preferred lie, so we can go ahead and clean the golf ball, which is always worth doing. Now, I know this is a big right to left putt, but because it's winter and the greens are slower, it's not going to break as much. I also know I don't really want to hit it past and have a downhiller coming back. So for me in this situation, I'm thinking about where I want to hit my next putt from, what the speed's going to be like, and roughly how much it's going to break. Really all we're trying to do is trying to get it near the hole. When I was younger, people would always use the phrase get it inside a dustbin lid, like if you had the big bins that are about this big. I think that's really simple and easy advice. We're just trying to get this near the hole to make our net shot easier. We're definitely not really trying to hole this. Now, big things to look for are, is it uphill or downhill? And also today it's so windy, I'm going to factor the wind into this because it's kind of into and off the left, and that's going to definitely affect how quick this putt is. In summer I'd give this like 8 feet swing. I'm going to give it like 5 or 6, and I'm just going to make sure I give it enough pace to get there. But really I want my miss to be kind of short left, because that's going to be the easiest next putt. Pretty good effort that. When we have long putts, it's really important just to be thinking about the probability of where you should miss. You know, if it's a real uphill putt, you're probably going to miss it short. If it's really right to left, you're probably going to miss it short left. And you're just always thinking about where's the most likely place this ball is going to miss and moving away from that and trying to do the opposite to get the ball nearest the hole. Okay, we're on day 2 of this video because it was so windy yesterday. All my stuff just kept falling over. Tripods everywhere, microphones everywhere. So it's a bit calmer today and we can get this done. Hole 2 and we've got a par 3, and I think this is really interesting because I have a really good strategy to help you get the right distance on par 3s. So we know around par 3s we can get loads of trouble, and actually working out a safe zone in the centre of the green with a consistent distance that we can play for is really important. And that's why I like people to use course planners, because I think in scenarios like this it can really help you work out what the right distance is. So we're on the 11th hole now here at Woodley, and you can see lots of bunker in here and also quite a lot uphill this hole, so there's lots of different factors to play in here. But something I like to do is to take the green and look at where the key hazards are, and then move the distance around that I get from my watch or my laser to work out where's good and where's not so good. So my ShotScope watch here is telling me that I've got 106 yards to the front of the green, which is great, but actually I know there's a 10-yard false front here, so I need to add 10 yards minimum for that slope on the front here. That's going to suddenly give me like a minimum distance of 116 yards where I'm safely on the green. Now if I look at my hazards on here, I can also see the bunkers that are the front and short that just kind of grow into the front of the green finish at 114 yards. So really I want to be a little bit past them to avoid going in them. So from that 116 number I've got, which is the front edge, plus the 10 yards for the false slope, I'm just going to add an extra 4, which should cover me for the worst of those really steep bunkers short. So that's going to get me to 120 yards, and I would literally just shade that out on my course planner at the front and be like, this area of the green is not in play, this needs to go a minimum of 120 yards. Now obviously that's 120 yards if this was kind of a flat shot. Hopefully you can see there's quite a lot of slope here. So let's actually check on my ShotScope laser how much slope it's got uphill. I think it can be really easy to underestimate how much slope affects the shot, so having a laser which does give you the slope reading, which you can use when you're out practicing, is really helpful. It kind of teaches you how much slope is affecting the shot, but also you are allowed to write this down. So if you have a course plan and you come out and measure what the slope is, you can write that down and read it when you're out on the golf course. You're just not allowed to make the measurements during a competition. Okay, so this is playing 9 yards uphill, which is basically nearly a full extra club for me. So from that initial 108 yards to the front of the green, I'm actually now going to end up at a playing distance of 129 yards for my minimum distance. I think a lot of people wouldn't think to jump that far up once they looked at that number. So all I would actually do is literally shade that out on the front of the green and be like, this front edge is not in play, I'm going to carry this a minimum of 129 yards. Now, I would also do the same for the back edge of the green. Sometimes you kind of need to judge this based on what's over the back. If you actually feel like it's safe to just run through the back and it would leave you maybe just a putt from the fringe or a fairly simple chip, then you don't necessarily need to add a maximum distance. In this scenario, we've got quite a lot of bunkering at the back of the green, and they're really nasty small pot bunkers, and you're playing back down a really quick slope, so you really do not want to be long here. So it's definitely worth adding a maximum club distance in here. So I can see on my watch I've got 144 yards to the green. Obviously I need to add the 9 of slope onto that, so that leaves me at 153 to the back of the green as a playing distance. From there, I'm going to take 10 yards off just to make sure I'm safe. So actually my maximum distance to the back is going to be 143, which kind of leaves me about 15 yards to hit this in between. Now, obviously, I've not taken into account the conditions of the day-to-day, so the wind and the temperature. Those are just like how the numbers play on this hole. But what this allows you to do is look at these numbers and think, well, I cannot pick a club that doesn't carry at least 129 yards, and I also shouldn't pick a club that carries over 143 yards. And then suddenly it makes it really easy to make a club selection, because actually you've probably only got 1 or 2 clubs that's going to go inside that distance. I think it also really gets you out of that mentality of maybe thrashing at the shortest club possible, because actually you don't want to be short of that minimum distance we've given ourselves. Now, as well as doing this from the front to the back of the green, so to work out your distance, I think you can also do this for start line. So here on this hole, all the danger really is to the left. There's a big slope to the left, and there's also bunkers to the left of the green. And actually, if we miss out to the right, there's a slope that's going to bounce the ball in back to the green, and all the green kind of slopes right to left, so it's going to help you out if you miss it out to the right. So here on my course plan, I'd also be shading out the left side of the green and moving my aim further over to the right. So in this scenario today where the pin is, I'd just be accepting that I can't fire at that. It's too dangerous, and I'm probably going to take 10 yards off the left side of the green and just act as if it's not there. So suddenly that leaves me with like a little square on my course planner, which is the zone I'm aiming for. And then very clear that I'm going to be aiming right of target, maybe even right of the centre of the green, and I've got 2 very specific numbers to help me pick the right club. So if we go bang smack in the middle of them, let's go aim for a 135 shot. It is freezing cold today, so that's probably playing 145, 150. So I'm going to hit a little soft 7. I would really encourage you to mess around with trying going up a club and hitting it softer, because I think that's a lot more controlled most of the time, especially in a scenario like this where we've got a false front and we really want to make sure we get up the green. I also really like this system because it makes me really confident in the club I've picked, because I have such precise distances. I almost feel like this can't possibly go wrong. So 7 iron. Gonna move my target right of centre and probably aim like 2/3 to the right side of the green. Not necessarily my best strike, but that is perfectly on the green, which just shows you how going through the right method, getting the right club, and also maybe giving yourself an extra 5 yards of distance if you don't strike it perfect, the ball still gets there, is a really good way to help you shoot lower scores. So when it comes to pace putting, there's a few things I like to do to make sure I'm more consistent, and I've kind of read the slope of the green and told my brain all the information it needs to get the ball near the hole. Now, the first one is that I always like to read the putt like a book. And what I mean by that is I always go to the low point of the hole, so I'm looking up the slope as you would if you were kind of holding a book up to read it. So for me, I always go to the bottom of the slope and look up, rather than being at the top of the slope and looking down for the putt. And from there, I'm going to go to the middle point, so I'm halfway between where the ball is and where the pin is. Now, this is something called triangulation, and it really helps your brain to understand the length of the putt, the depth of the putt, and allows you to better judge the speed you need to hit it to get the ball near the hole. So I'm doing 2 different things here. One, I'm visually teaching my brain how far the putt is and how firm I need to hit it. And 2, I'm seeing the severity of the slope, which is going to help me with how much the putt is going to break. In this case, it's going to move quite a lot from right to left. Now, although I haven't officially done the aim point course, I have read up a lot on it and watched a few videos on it, and I do like to stand on the line of my putt so I can feel the slope with my feet. And I would recommend people to do this because it can really help if you struggle with green reading to feel where the high and the low points is. In this case, it's pretty severe. So hopefully it's quite obvious. Now again, the big thing I encourage you to do here is to stand and look at this putt and think, where is the most likely place this is going to miss? So here we've got a severe slope running right to left, so it's most likely that we're going to miss this left of the hole. It's also slightly uphill, so the chances are we're probably going to miss this short. So in all scenarios, I'm actually then just going to aim further right and remind myself to hit it a little bit firmer than I might normally would, and just try and move away from that kind of short left miss that I predict is what's going to happen. Now we've got to remember, as amateur golfers, the majority of the time we underread putts, so we miss them on the low side. So actually we should be aiming further up the hill than we think. I think at this point, because we're outside 10 feet, we're really just trying to get the ball near the hole. So actually if you miss it a little bit higher, it's probably going to keep running and get nearer the hole than actually if you miss it low and the ball's just running away from the pin at that point. So generally aiming on the high side is going to help you out. There's a lot of slope here, so I'm going to probably give this like 8 feet of break. I mean, I definitely missed it on the high side, but it was a lot quicker than I thought it was. Now, if you do hit your putt past the hole like I did, it's really important to keep watching it and see where it breaks. That's going to give you really good information on what the putt's going to do when you're hitting it back to the hole afterwards. So I'm now on the par 4 13th hole, Woodley, and I think this is a really interesting hole, and it's kind of the classic style of hole where I see people going wrong with their course strategy. Now, you can probably see this is quite a long and fairly narrow par 4. We've got bunkers all up the left, we've got heather all down the right, we've also got a penalty area to the left and OB left of that, so there's lots of different things going on here. And although the first thing you might think about here is, oh, there's bunkers there, there's heather there, there's water here, actually I want you to think about the distance and the optimal distance to hit this shot. So I've been on Google Earth and measured different widths of the fairway here. So if we look up at where we probably hit driver in summer, which is up by the furthest bunker on the left, which is about 220 yards away, the fairway actually pinches here and it's only 22 yards wide. Now, if we go on tour and look at some of the course management advice used there, Decade is one of the biggest course management systems used by tour players, and Scott Fawcett, who runs that, recommends that tour players shouldn't hit driver unless they have a 60-yard gap between hazards. So we should definitely not be trying to aim to hit it in a 20-yard gap in the fairway, because we're just not that accurate. But I think this is where it becomes interesting, because actually if we drop back kind of 20-25 yards to make sure we're over the first bunker but we don't reach the second bunker, we can use a combination of fairway and semi to give us a bigger area to hit into. And this is why I think you can't always worry specifically about fairways hit or very specific stats, because actually we just want to put the ball that's somewhere in play. Now here the semi-rough actually runs all the way behind that second bunker on the left, so it gives us a full width of 39 yards across that area. That's nearly double what we've got up next to the bunker, and it gives us loads more room to work with. So what I'd be suggesting here is to forget about just hitting the fairway, actually move our target a little bit left, include some of that semi-rough and hit into the distance where we have much wider playable width. All that area is going to give us a full swing. The semi-rough's not long at all. We're going to be able to get a good strike on it and still be able to get the ball up, on or near the green. Now that area is about 205 yards from this tee, but it is freezing cold in England at the moment, so it's probably playing about 220, plus we've got a bit of wind, so I think driver's going to be okay in this scenario. In summer I'd be looking at hitting a hybrid or a 3-wood into that zone. Now this is a very straight hole. The pin's almost dead in line with where I'm stood right now, and I think that can be quite intimidating to a lot of people, and it almost feels like it's easier to hit it left or right in those scenarios. So what I would really suggest people do is to create an angle by where they tee up on the tee box. So if you're someone who misses left a lot and you're very cautious of those hazards up the left, I would move all the way over to the left side of the tee box. This allows you to create some angle across to the right and feel like you're hitting up the right side of the hole. And actually if you do then hit kind of a big draw, it gives you loads of room to move the ball left into, and the ball will still be safe and in play. Now remember, it's only your ball that has to be in the teeing ground, so you can tee your ball up here and have your feet outside of there, and that's perfectly fine. Likewise, if you're someone who misses it to the right a lot, you can move over to the right side of the tee box, aim up the left and kind of cut it back in play, and it just gives you a bit more room to work with, and I also think it just makes you feel a lot more comfortable looking up a very straight hole when you do that. Mine misses a little bit left, so I'm going to tee it up over on this left side of the tee box, give myself some room to hit out to the right. That's perfectly in that gap between the bunkers, which is nice and very well planned. What we really need to remember when we're plotting away around the golf course is that it's all about disaster management. And that sounds really negative, but we know good golf is about avoiding bad shots and avoiding big scores. It's not about birdies and hitting your best shot on absolutely every hole. The reality is no one hits good shots all the time. Even Tiger said he would only pull off 1 or 2 shots around. Now obviously his bad shots are better than ours, but it's really all about that concept of working with what you've got, avoiding the really big hazards and the things that are going to cost you loads of shot, and actually just hitting kind of your average or even bad shot, but controlling and managing where that's going to go and adjusting your strategy based on that. Now I would always recommend you have some sort of device, be that a course planner or a GPS, which actually shows you the shape of the green. And I think that's really important because it helps you pick your strategy when you're going into the green. Now in this scenario here on the 13th, from the fairway, the green actually looks really wide, really big, and like there's loads of space to hit your golf ball. But actually this green quite severely narrows when you get to the back. It all slopes away from you and there's some really tricky little bunkers at the back of the green. So in this scenario, hitting it on the front half of the green is way easier than on the back because literally you've got like double the width to hit into. Now, if you didn't have anything to show you that, you just simply wouldn't know that at all. So in this scenario, I can see we've got 148 to the back of the green on my watch. If I laser the pin, it's 140 yards away, which for me is just too near that back narrow bit. So actually I'm going to play probably like 10 yards short of the pin, just to make sure I'm in that fat bit of the green and I'm giving myself the best chance of having a nice 2-putt up the green to the pin. Sometimes the best shot or the best strategy, the best place to play to is actually further away from the hole, and actually that's completely fine. We've got to remember we're not trying to hit perfect shots into the middle of the fairway and then into the middle of the green or next to the pin. We're trying to hit our ball in the most optimal place to try and get the best score on that hole for us. So if you're someone who's aiming for bogey golf and you're trying to bogey every hole, or if you're someone who's aiming for scratch golf and you want to par every hole, we're trying to plot the ball in an optimal position to shoot that score. And actually more often than not, if I hit this ball to kind of 20 foot from the pin in a safe zone, that gives me a chance to make birdie, which I wouldn't have done if I kind of fire at the pin, misjudge it a little bit and run over the back of the green to one of those really deep bunkers. Remember, we're trying to avoid disasters, not shoot at pins and make birdies. So where is the most optimal and safe place we can get the ball? And actually if I misstrike it and come up short, there's loads of room short of this green, and even if I absolutely flush it, I'm not going to get all the way to the back. Okay, so 130, but it's freezing cold. I feel like I just hit a chippy 7 everywhere today.